everyone, Salomé speaking. I'm a PhD candidate in population health at the University of Ottawa, and I work at the Healthy Active Living and Obesity Research Group at CHIO under the supervision of Mark Tremblay. Today, I represent the report card grades on the physical activity of children and youth comparing 30 very high Human Development Index countries, a work that was developed using the data from the Global Matrix tree on physical activity for children and youth. So I represent here the background and objectives, the method, the result, discussion focusing on the overall physical activity and sedentary behavior indicators, and the strategic priorities for the very high HDI countries. So physical inactivity was found associated with adverse physical, mental, social, and cognitive health outcomes among school-age children and adolescents in the literature. And accumulating data shows that the majority of children and youth do not meet the current recommendation of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per day in very high HDI countries and regions. To better understand the childhood physical inactivity crisis, report cards on physical activity of children and youth were prepared concurrently in 30 very high HDI countries. You can see here the list of the 30 countries, and you can also kind of see them, well, at least the bigger one on the map on the right. So the objective of this presentation is to present, describe, and compare the findings from this report card, to present the common data gaps, to provide strategic priorities for improving children and youth physical activity. So concerning the methods for the development of the report cards, first of all, every country had to create a report card development team. And for each of them, they had to identify a report card leader or leaders. And each country formed a working group of national and international experts on physical activity from the academic, private, and government sectors, and research staff from lead organizations. Then they had to compile the available evidence in their country for the 5 to 17 years old that were relevant for 10 indicators: overall physical activity, organized sport and physical activity, active play, active transportation, sedentary behaviors, physical fitness, family and peers, school, community and environment, and government. Finally, the report card development team had to reach a consensus for the grading of each indicator, and for that they could use a standardized grading scheme and standardized benchmarks that were provided to them by the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance. Then concerning the methods that we use for the analysis for this work that I'm presenting here, we perform a few very simple descriptive statistics. By this I mean making average grades and standard deviation, converting categorical variables, the letter grades, into interval variables. The incomplete grades were treated as missing values, and average were calculated from interval values, and the floor value was converted back to a letter grade. We also create three scores: the overall score, the behavioral score, which includes the overall physical activity, organized sports and physical activity participation, active play, active transportation, and sedentary behavior grades. And then we also created the source of influence score, which includes the grades of family and peers, school, community and environment, and government. And for the calculation of these scores, they were calculated by summing the relevant interval data. Incomplete grades were removed and the scores were reweighted accordingly. So now for the result, this table presents the grade assigned to the 10 core physical activity indicators for the 30 very high HDI countries of the Global Matrix tree. So in total, 300 grades were assigned. So a total of 233 letter grades were assigned, and 66 incomplete grades were assigned. to the 10 core indicators. We also had a special case of one non-applicable grade that was attributed to active transportation in Qatar. If you look at the average grades that are presented in the last column of this table, you can see that the country who obtained the highest average was Slovenia with a B, and the countries with the lowest average were Chile and the United States with a D. Now, concerning the indicators that have the smallest number of incomplete grades, we had sedentary behavior that had 0 incomplete grades. All the countries were able to assign a letter grades for this indicator. Then overall physical activity had only one country that assigned incomplete grades, and it was Japan. And finally, organized sports and physical activity and active transportation had only 2 incomplete grades. Then the indicators with the largest number of incomplete grades were active play with 20 incomplete grades out for 30 countries. And physical fitness and family and peers all both had 13 incomplete grades. It means that there is less evidence available for those indicators in the very high HDI countries that were participating in this project for now. Now, if we look at which country had the smallest number of incomplete grades, Canada, Czech Republic, Finland, and Slovenia managed to assign a letter grade, so they found enough evidence to assign a letter grade to all the 10 indicators. They had 0 incomplete grades. And the countries with the largest number of incomplete grades were the United Arab Emirates with 6 incomplete grades, Jersey and Qatar with 5 incomplete grades. Now, this table presents the descriptive statistics of the grades by indicator and group of indicators for the very high Human Development Index countries of the Global Matrix 3. You can see in this table that overall physical activity was indicators with the lowest mean letter grade, which was a D-, and community and environment was the indicator with the highest mean letter grade with a B-. So if you look at the score that were calculated for this analysis, you can see that the behavioral indicators obtain a mean letter grade of D+, while the source of influence indicators obtain a mean letter grade of C+. So this means that in general, the very high HDI countries were good at providing an environment that is favorable for the physical activity of children and youth in theory. However, this favorable environment is not translated into good physical activity grades. So it means that we must be missing something, and there is something else that should, in addition to a positive environment, that should help increase the physical activity of children and youth, and we are not providing that for now in those countries. And finally, in average, the mean letter grade that was obtained for the 300 grades that were collected it was C-. Now, this figure presents is a frequency plot by letter grade among the 30 very high Human Development Index countries in the Global Matrix 3. On the left, it's for the 10 core indicator, and on the right for the behavioral indicators and for the source of influence indicators. Well, so you can see that overall, like the score respect a normal distribution, And the figure on the right again shows that in general better grades were obtained for the source of influence indicator and less good grades for the behavioral indicators. Now we're moving to the discussion, and if we focus on the overall physical activity indicators, a total of 87 surveys and studies were included in this work for the 30 very high HDI countries, which represent a total sample size of 1,005,000, well, almost 6,000 children and youth. 21 of these studies used an objective measurement method, including 20 studies that used accelerometry and 1 study using pedometers. The minimum wear time for accelerometer was 3 to 7 consecutive days, and 9 different accelerometer cut points were applied for analysis in those studies. And then 66 studies and survey were used a subjective measurement method. They use 35 use survey-specific questionnaires, 14 use original or adapted version of the Health, Behavior, and School-Age Children questionnaire, 5 use the Global School-Based Student Health Survey questionnaire, 4 use the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System questionnaire, 3 use the International Physical Activity questionnaire, and 5 use other questionnaire. So this great variability of method and analysis that were used in those 87 studies means that the comparison and the interpretation of the overall physical activity grades should be conducted carefully. And concerning the grade for the overall physical activity indicators, they range from F to A-, and Slovenia was the only country with a very good grade, which was A-, and all the other countries' grades fell between F and C. So these results are consistent with the current literature that was presented in the introduction. And so this project brings additional evidence that the situation regarding the physical activity of children and youth is very concerning in very high HDI countries. And public investment to implement effective intervention for increasing physical activity opportunities is urgently needed today. Now, if we focus on the sedentary behaviors indicator, small methodological differences were observed across country, and sedentary behavior was the only indicator without any incomplete grades. Slovenia and Spain had the highest grade that was obtained, a B+, and the remaining countries all had C's or D's. And in average, this indicator obtained a D+. So these results show also that the development of more effective intervention targeting the reduction of screen time among children and youth in very high HDI countries should be a public health priority. This project has also allowed us to highlight several research and surveillance gaps. There is still today a big need for the development of an international adoption of standardized method to conceptualize and measure the 10 physical activity indicators. There is also a problem in the way in the benchmark that we have for now for the organized sports and physical activity, active play, and active transportation, because the way it's measured today, it doesn't allow us to identify the dose of physical activity that is associated with those indicators. We still need to have more participating countries. There are still many countries missing in this project, and we need to know what is happening there concerning the physical activity of children. and the not very good grades that we observed overall show that effective concrete strategies and intervention to improving the physical activity and reducing the amount of screen time among children in youth are urgently needed. So the key findings for this work is that it provides a comprehensive summary of the level and context of the physical activity of children and youth among the participating very high HDI countries. That there were several methodological limitations and research gaps identified. Better grades and the source of influence levels were observed, but those good grades were not translated into good physical activity and sedentary behavior grades, and this is a problem. This project brings additional evidence that the situation regarding the physical activity and sedentary behaviors in children and youth living in very high HDI countries is extremely concerning. And again, strategic investment to implement effective intervention to increase physical activity opportunities and reduce screen time should become a public health priority in very high HDI countries. Finally, we asked to all the report card leaders and their working group from each country to provide us their top 3 strategic priorities for improving the grades in in their country. And so we put all those I put all those strategy top 3 priorities together, and I tried to obtain like some kind of average priorities that were identified for the 30 very high HDI countries. And so here this is what I obtained. So in general, developing a standardized international surveillance system of the physical activity and related indicators among children and youth to fill the current gap should become should be a priority for those countries. Also, investing in a multi-level, multi-sectoral social intervention and research agenda to manage recreational screen time among children and youth. And finally, creating a comprehensive school physical activity programs that support and allow all children and youth to meet the physical activity guidelines in the school setting, and promoting active transportation were also mentioned by the majorities of the report card teams participating in this project. So this is just to show you that this work presented here was extracted from an actual published paper in the Journal of Physical Activity and Health that is entitled Report Card Grades on the Physical Activity of Children and Youth Comparing 30 very high HDI countries. And so you can find way more detail there, and I provide the information and the web link here. And finally, I would like to use this opportunity to thank Dr. Mark Tremblay for accepting to take me and my broken English as a PhD student, and offering the opportunity to work on this very exciting project for my PhD, like the development and the coordination of the global matrix tree. Also would like to thank Mr. Joel Barnes, because he has been providing a lot of technical support in every single step of the development of the global matrix tree. And all the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance Executive Committee members who have been also very invested and very helpful in all the steps of this project. All the co-authors that helped me with writing this manuscript, and really to thank all the report card leaders and the report card development team members that represent 517 people around the world, who actually make the realization of this project possible. Thank you very much.